Well, yeah, old Big Mac, we've had First Army. What about Second Army? Wow! Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fast, the old Big Mac here, and it's time for another video. And in this one, we are indeed talking about second armies and why they're really important. Let's get into it! Alright, unless it's not painfully obvious yet, my first army is orcs. Gotta love them, always have, always will. And most people in the Warhammer hobby, whether it's 40k or Age of Sigmar or Old World or whatever, have a main army. It's like the one that you're known for. It's the one that you have the most stuff on. It's the one that you tend to collect other things for, even if they aren't actually used on the tabletop. And that is very, very common. We all have our favorites, and they're all cool for all the different reasons. You know, even if something doesn't necessarily float your boat, you can appreciate that it's your friend's favorite, and we tend to, you know, encourage that, buy things for each other, and maybe even antagonize each other a little bit with, like, little trophies and stuff on our armies that are our friend's favorite, and vice versa. Is a whole lot of fun to kind of bring yourself and your friends together and have a good time with your armies. But what we're talking about today is your own second army. Now, most people, when they start the Warhammer hobby, will start with one of these. This is a starter box with all the rules and some models in it to get playing on the game. And these starter boxes always come with two different armies in them. This particular one here is the Battle for Macragge, which was the 4th edition starter set. And it was one of the better sets as far as terrain goes. You got this really cool Crash Lander, and then had like a pretty good size starting Tyranid army and some Space Marines. This is very similar to the starter set you're going to get these days, which is still Space Marines and Tyranids. That's why I chose this box. Now, often what happens is people will buy this box and either take off on one of the armies and not really do anything with the other, or they get into it with a friend and they split the box where one person gets one army and the other person gets the other army. These are very common, and if the armies aren't your thing, that's a totally great way to get into it. I'm saying you should have a second army anyway for a couple of different reasons. My main one, and I've talked about this in probably innumerable videos at this point, is painting. When you are painting an army, especially something like orcs, which is a horde army, you're painting a lot of figures, and then you are painting them very much the same way or the same technique. And that causes burnout, because even if you super enjoy the army and super enjoy painting them, nobody wants to paint the same thing 100 times without any kind of a break. And so if you have a second army, like this Imperial Guard army, you can see that even though they're green and even though they're a horde, it is a much different painting style and paint scheme than my orcs. I even go so far as doing different basing materials on them so that I have this great palette cleanser where when I am just not wanting to paint my orcs at all, maybe I'll be willing to paint my Imperial Guard. Now, I have more than 2 armies and they're all different in this way. In fact, here is some Eldar with, again, a completely different paint scheme and style and base. And here are some Space Marines, also, again, different paint scheme, different style, different basing material. And I do this on purpose so that as I get tired of something, I've got something else to go to that's fresh and different, that's going to keep my creative stuff going and my need to hobby and want to hobby, because I have different things to work on. Now, some people will take this even further and have, okay, I've got a 40k army and an Age of Sigmar army and a Necromunda force and, you know, a Warcry band or whatever. And that's great too. If your styles are so different that, like, hey, maybe I've got like a bunch of vehicles in my 40k army, I'm doing all these tanks and stuff, and then I've got giant spiders in my AOS army, and then I've got, you know, a horde of goblins in my Old World army. That's really cool, and that totally works too, and it's definitely something I can see. It's something I've even thought about doing. The Age of Sigmar dragons especially, I don't know, there's just something about them that are so stinking cool, even though I don't really want to play the game or collect the armies. there's a part of me in the back of my head that's like, I should just buy each dragon and just build the dragons and have a bunch of dragons in my display case. And it would be a really cool palette cleanser in between painting all of these chipped up 40K tanks and guns and walkers and things like that to paint a dragon. So yeah, even going to different systems totally works too. But this is more than just a painting thing, and that's why I'm saying Second Army, and especially Second Army in the same game that you actually want to play. Now, I do have to specify that want to play part. Personally, I can't stand Warhammer 40K 10th edition. I think it's an awful game. I think it's Magic the Gathering with extra steps, and I don't like things about it. So in my particular case, it kind of doesn't matter because I don't play the game anyway. But back in the day when there were editions that I did like and did play, it was super important to have more than one army in that rule set so that you can practice playing in different ways. And I'll give you a really bad example from my past and a really good one. 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition, I played Dark Eldar and Black Templar Space Marines as my two main armies. And they played extremely similarly. They both wanted to go very fast and get into close combat as quickly as possible. And if anything, fight first as much as they can. And this is back when initiative was a thing, but also like fighting first on charges was a thing, and coming out of your rhinos or your raiders and whatnot. And my armies ended up being kind of mirror images of each other. I had all of these squads with close combat weapons and raiders in my Dark Eldar, and all of these squads with close combat weapons and rhinos in my Black Templar army. And then even my paint schemes were very similar. My Dark Eldar started off black, and I eventually repainted them gunmetal just to try something a little different, but it was still essentially dark armor. And yeah, Black Templar are black. So yeah, I had these two black armies that did close combat. It just wasn't a good combination. So now when I got back into the hobby in 8th edition, obviously I went with orcs this time as my main. I got a bunch of the stuff back from my youth. I bought a bunch of new stuff, started going on it. And my orcs at first were very vehicle centric. I actually didn't have a whole lot of orc infantry, mostly because I didn't own a lot, but also it was all the new buggies and stuff that brought me in. And so I was buying the new buggies, building those, painting those. I had a lot of bikers that I was building and painting. I had Death Dreads and Killicans and things like that. And I just really liked the vehicles. And so I found myself painting a lot of vehicles in very bright, lurid colors, such as my Burnabama here, to give you a good example. Obviously it's red because the red ones go faster with these bright honking orange flames all over it. And then as you can see, all sorts of chipped up and weathered and, generally looking very, very cool. However, this is like a very specific style of painting. And after a while, it started getting old. And also as I was playing games at the time, again, I'm moving fast, I'm getting into close combat, and all I want to do is crump things up close or use my vehicles to blow stuff up. And it really got me thinking, I need something a little different. And that's when I dug my Imperial Guard out of the boxes and started putting them together and doing them. And they were very, very infantry heavy. It's kind of funny because as the years have gone by, I've now switched, and my orcs are mostly infantry and my Imperial Guard is mostly vehicles. But I digress. When I first started back into the hobby and I was playing games of 8th edition and the 9th edition, on the regular for me anyway, it was nice to have a whole bunch of infantry. And it was a whole bunch of infantry that, even though they moved around, really it was going after objectives or holding a line together and really doing a lot of shooting, a lot of DACA. And it played incredibly different from my orcs at the time. And then again, with the paint schemes being incredibly different, it gave me this really fantastic dichotomy between having two different armies that I really loved, two different armies that painted totally different, and two different armies that played totally different. And so it was just refreshing. If I ever got tired of one, I could go play a game with the other one and feel refreshed about the hobby again. And this was kind of in the golden age of being able to collect two armies at the same time, because Games Workshop kept coming out with these battle boxes. And there were some FOMO boxes, but most of them were pretty readily available for a decent amount of time, because the whole idea was to get people to start collecting new armies. and it totally worked. I was collecting Space Marines at the time. I really wanted to do some Craft World Eldar, so this box like Wake the Dead here that had a whole bunch of both really called to me, and it'd say, hey, I can add stuff to both my armies in one box. This is a great deal. They had other ones that had armies that maybe weren't my favorite. There was one that was Eldari and Drukhari, the Blood of the Phoenix, which is down there. I bought that one too, sold off the Drukhari half, but I was still happy to get my hands on some more Eldar, which I only started because this box came out. So the fact that they've kind of lost these boxes in recent years kind of sucks, because I am personally a fan of these. I like the idea of having two different armies in a box. It's fun to have on your own. It's fun to split with a friend, and they just make for an exciting product. Now, I know some of you are going to be saying, old Big Mac, come on, really? You want us to be buying more armies while Games Workshop is coming out with things at a breakneck speed, and there's all this FOMO, and they're raising prices, and like, what are you talking about? Hey man, you don't gotta buy new. Nobody said you had to buy new. Nobody said you had to buy the newest stuff. Nobody said you had to play 10th edition. You can absolutely buy used pieces and used stuff on eBay and used armies. You could buy secondhand stuff from all over the place. Most friendly local game stores now have a trade-in section because so many people do cycle through their armies and stuff. You can buy a second army that's super duper old school. The amount of old Hammer people that are playing things like 2nd and 3rd edition on purpose and building armies for it on 25mm Goblin Green bases is skyrocketing. So why not make that your second army? By no means do you have to buy into the newest stuff. In fact, I would say having a second army is like the anti-FOMO. I'll give you an example. We were just talking about the Eldari, right? And how I want a Craft World army and all this stuff. All of that stuff is coming out right now. And there's like a codex with a leak and all these people talking about rules problems and Karandras disappearing and this, that, and the other thing. And it's exciting that there's new stuff, but it's disappointing all the FOMO. And they don't have a launch box yet, but I mean, like the Deathcore of Krieg box, which I also want, did sell out really fast. And there's a lot of like bad feelings about that. I have other armies to focus on right now, so it's not a problem. I don't feel like I'm missing out because I have plenty of other things to work on. And then when the day comes that these guys are getting the new stuff and they're doing some great big FOMO box for Space Marines again or something like that, or more Imperial Guard, then I can pick up my Eldar stuff and work on my Eldar stuff at my own pace, my own speed. And that's the really nice thing about having the multiple armies, is that ability to just not have to be blindsided into just the one force and have those bad feelings and those FOMOs. And one of the easiest ways you have of picking up a second army is to actually win Old Big Mac's Orc army. This is but a small portion of the giveaway. I'm doing a giveaway. It's over the first 3 months of 2025, so January, February, March. And at the end of March, I will be pulling names for winners. And I'm literally giving away a chunk of my own personal Orc army. Basically, I'm sitting at over 10,000 points, and there's a whole lot of it that isn't built and isn't painted, and a whole lot of things that I have, way more than the maximum numbers you can have. So sharing it with my friends seems like the best idea. And so what we're going to have is a grand prize giveaway of an actual army. A lot of it is built, a lot of it is new on the sprue, and a lot of it is built and primed. And so yeah, one lucky person will win all of this, but we're going to have more than one prize. I'm also giving away a character that is totally painted by myself, as well as some other prizes as well, as I find things and add to the prize pile, because it's just fun to give things away. And how you enter this is super easy. You can either sign up here for a YouTube membership, or click on the link down below to my Patreon and sign up for a paid Patreon membership. Every single month you have either one of those, or both if you want, you get an entry into this contest. So all my patrons that are already patrons that are paid in January all already have an entry, and next month in February they'll have another entry, and I will put all of those physical entries into a bucket, and we will shake it up and we will pull the names live during a live stream. It'll be a whole heck of a lot of fun. And you don't have to live in the US to win, because I've decided that I am going to ship this on my own dime no matter where in the world it ends up going. So if you want to add a second army and that second army is orcs, this is a darn good way to do it. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I hope that it resonated with some of you, hearing the different reasons why having a second army is something really important for your hobby, for both painting and playing. And yeah, maybe I should experiment some more with those owning things that are outside of the 40K universe to cleanse my palate even more. All right, we'll talk about that more in another video. And until then, walk on!